Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. We'll start off our session with the Quran and the verses of the Quran that are under discussion today are verses 25 to 27 of Surah Yunus. So they read as Wallahu yad'u ila dar salam wa yahdi man yasha'u ila siratim mustaqim lillazina ahsanul husna wa ziyada wa la yarhaqu wujuhahum qataran wa la zilla ulaika ashabul jannah hum fiha khalidun. And God invites you to paradise, the abode of peace. He guides according to the law whomever He wills to a straight path. Those who did good deeds shall have a good reward and more besides. Neither blackness nor humiliation shall overcast their faces. These are the dwellers of paradise, wherein they shall abide forever. وَالَّذِينَ كَسَبُوا السَّيِّئَاتِ جَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ بِمِثْلِهَا وَتَرْهَقُهُمْ ذِلَّةٌ مَا لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ عَاصِمٍ كَأَنَّمَا أُغْشِيَتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ قِطْعًا مِّنَ اللَّيْلِ مُظْلِمًا أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. As for those that have earned evil, then the reward of evil is evil, and humiliation will cover them. No one will be able to save them from God. It will be as though patches of the dark night have veiled their faces. They are the dwellers of the fire, wherein they shall abide forever. Viewers, you can see clearly that this is a very specific style of the Quran in which parallel situations are placed adjacent to one another. We see in the first section of these verses the fate of those people who will end up in paradise, and right next to that we find a mention of those people who will end up in hell. So the first thing which is mentioned here is that God guides according to His law whomsoever He wills to a straight path. The important thing to realize here is that this guidance of God is not based on any whim or any desire or anything which might be haphazard. It has a very sound basis. It's a law which is governed by His own wisdom. And the law is that the person who is willing to be guided is guided. A person who actually gives value to his inner guidance is the person who is guided by the Almighty. And a person who does not value the inner guidance or the innate guidance or the awareness of good and evil which is found in every human being, he is not guided by the Almighty. And whenever the words Man Yasha appear like this, basically the stress is to say that no one can stop the hand of God from implementation. No deity, no person who intercedes before God has the power to stop what He would like to implement. So these words have both these connotations. First, that God will do whatever He would like to, of course referring to the fact in accordance with the law that He has made for this whole exercise, and that is that people who are worthy of being guided shall be guided. And the second is that when He decides to guide some people or a group of people, then there's no one who can stop Him. And if He decides to misguide people as a result of punishment, then there is no one who can stop His hand in any way. So the Quran says that these are the people who did good deeds and shall have a good reward. As far as the first of them are concerned, neither blackness nor humiliation shall overcast their faces. They are the dwellers of paradise, wherein they shall abide forever. So they are living the way they are going to dwell in paradise, the way they are going to live in paradise is explained here in a way that inspires people to do good deeds so that they can end up in paradise. And right next to that we find the opposite, and that is that as for those that have earned evil, then the reward of evil is evil, and humiliation will cover them. No one will be able to save them from God. It will be as though patches of the dark night have veiled their faces. Again, this is the explanation or the description of hell, which we can clearly see is found adjacent to the portrayal of paradise. These are the two things that often occur together, and clearly it is said that these are the people who shall be covered with patches of dark night, and their faces will be veiled, and they are the dwellers of the fire, wherein they shall live forever. The Quran has made this point in a number of instances that as far as this world is concerned, the consequence or the ultimate culmination of this world is going to be a day of judgment. On that day of judgment, people will be judged according to their deeds. And if people whose good deeds outnumber their evil ones will be the ones who will be pleased, whom God would be pleased with, and they will end up in paradise. Other than that, people who have done bad deeds and done them in abundance such that their evil deeds outdo their good deeds, then they are the ones who shall end up in hellfire. The Quran has made it absolutely clear that no intercession, no deity will be able to help people in any way. These are all false supports. A person is going to earn whatever he or she does in this world. No one else is going to have any effect or any impact on the consequence of a person or the place that he will end up in. So Quran at another instance has said, Laysa lil insani illa ma sa'a, which means that a person shall only earn what he has strived for in this world. So people have to be absolutely sure here that the call of God is, as the words beautifully say, Wallahu yad'u ila daris salam. God invites you to the abode of peace. And we see from the Quran that paradise has been called the abode of peace in a way that it will be a place in which a person will not have any fear of the future, nor any regret of the past. So the Quran uses this sentence copiously, La khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun, for the life of paradise. It tells us that a person, as far as he's going to stay in paradise, he's going to live in bliss, in joy, in comfort. When we live in this world, two greatest fears that plague us are the regrets of the past and, of course, the fears of the future. So the life of paradise has been depicted in the Quran in a sense that whatever will happen there will be free for any regrets. One will never regret what he did in the past or did not do in the past. Something that is a really good feeling that we can have whenever we are in a precarious situation. Similarly, there will be no fear or dread of the future. This is something that we all are so used to living in this world that we are either regretting the past or we are fearing the future. So the life of paradise is the entire opposite. There shall be none of these, but as far as the life of hell is concerned, the Quran says that this is something which again will be earned by people through their own misdeeds. And the Quran has said, وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ بِمِثْلِهَا, that the reward of evil is equal evil, is the same evil. And of course, signifying the fact that this is a place in which there shall be no recompense, and injustice will not be in any way served there. It will be justice all the way. And when people will land up there, they will be humiliated. As the Quran says, وَتَرْهَقُهُمْ zillah. Humiliation will cover them. They will be helpless there. They'll have no one to help them. And as the Quran says, كَأَنَّمَا أُغْشِيَتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ كِطْعًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مُظْلِمًا, which means that it will be as though patches of the dark night have veiled their faces, and these are the dwellers of the fire. So we have to understand that as far as this world is concerned, it is a world in which we are put through a trial of gratitude and a trial of patience. Trial of patience, of course, is the trial which we face when we are going through tribulations and difficult circumstances. And the trial of gratitude relates to situations in which we have been given in abundance, and the trial is whether we thank God or not, or we tend to forget Him. Both trials are very tough. In fact, the trial of gratitude perhaps is tougher than the trial of patience, because one tends to forget God when life is comfortable, when life is easy. So the Quran has made it absolutely clear that as far as the hereafter is concerned, these are the only two consequences which will arise, and we as human beings have to be vigilant and diligent in the way that we are going to behave in this world. Viewers, now let's go on to the next section of our study circle, which is the Hadith of the day. And the Hadith that has been selected for today is from the Al-Jami' al-Sahih of Imam Muslim. It is narrated by Anas ibn Malik anhu, who says that Anna Nabi qala la tahasadu wa la tabaghazu wa la taqata'u wa kunu ibadallahi ikhwana. So Anas bin Malik reported from the Prophet, who said, neither nurse mutual jealousy, nor hatred, nor break mutual relations, and become servants of God who are brothers to one another. These words are so impactful if we read them the way they have been reported. Of course, most of these words which are reported from the Prophet in this way are simply like maxims, they are like adages, they're like proverbs, and most of them have been preserved in their original language in such cases. So the word that starts off with the fact that la tahasadu, which means that do not be jealous of one another. Now, jealousy is something that we all know leads a person to nowhere. A person who ends up jealous is a person who has no other cause in life than to worry about what others have and he himself does not have. And he spends all his time in brooding, in complaining, in always being in a state of helplessness, in a state of frustration and disappointment. So a person who is jealous is bound to be a person who is always unsatisfied. One of the remedies to overcome jealousy is to be proud of one's own skill set. You see, every single person has been blessed with some skill, with some aptitude, I would say, some good inner ability. And if we are able to gauge our inner ability, if we are able to understand our own skill set and concentrate on what we have instead of concentrating on what other people have, this is something which is a good remedy of jealousy. It makes us concentrate on our own skill set. It makes us concentrate and realize that God has blessed us also. And the important thing, again, as we have seen from the Quranic passage that we have just studied, that this life is a place of test. In this life, people are given things, or they are stripped of these things, not on the basis of any merit, not on the basis of the fact that they deserved something, but the whole point is to try out a person. What does he do? How does he behave? And so therefore, if he is given something which is more accomplished, who is more accomplished than your own self, or maybe he has something which is far outnumbering what we have, this is not something which God has done as a favor to him. It's basically a trial and a test that he has put through. So one has to concentrate as much as possible on one's own self. Life is something which always beckons us to call and reflect over our own future. We are people who are given to a lot of frustration. At times we daydream, at times we brood, and most of the time we are always thinking that what other people have and what we do not have. So the point which the Prophet wants to make here is that basically don't think what other people have. Just concentrate on your own good deeds and the talent that you have. And of course, this would mean that you concentrate in discovering that talent in the first instance. And once this talent is discovered, then that talent must be put to use. And the use of that talent is that you can, of course, turn it into your profession. That passion can turn into a profession. And the second thing is that, of course, you can serve the society that you live in. The second thing which is mentioned here is wala tabaghazu, which means that do not hate one another. Now, hatred again is something which is a very mean emotion. It's an emotion which takes us away from one another. And hatred, of course, can be, it can arise from various reasons. And one of the most common reasons of this hatred, of course, is that you feel that other people are far blessed than your own self. So remember, at times, hatred is a very cherished thing. For example, if you hate evil, if you hate people who are being oppressed, people who are oppressing people, so this hatred is something which is rightly placed. It's a place that everyone has in one's own life, because hating evil, hating bad deeds, hating bad people, of course, is something which is basically emanating from our own sense of honor, our own sense of integrity. But when we cross these limits and we start hating people for what they have and what we do not have, then this is like crossing the limits. Also, one thing that might be of importance to note here is that whenever you have to hate a person because of his bad deeds, it should not be the person himself that you should hate. It's basically the bad deeds that he or she is doing that should be a cause of your hatred. So in other words, you have to hate the sin and not the sinner. Because you see, all of us have these weak points. All of us are in some form or the other. We are incapacitated, we are handicapped. And if we are hating people for these shortcomings, so remember, these shortcomings are found in ourselves as well. So the important thing is that we have to make the best out of what we have. And hating evil is not the solution. Reforming affectionately evil deeds and people who are around us is the right way. So the Prophet himself has said that you are people who are like brothers to one another, as the narrative itself goes on to say, Kunu ibadallahi ikhwana. that you are like a brotherhood to one another. You have the same fraternity. You have the same brotherhood and communique if you look at these things in a way that is positive. So to hide one another's bad habits and to encourage the good ones is what has to be done. And if a person has become incriminated with evil, then we should be even more concerned about that person. So one thing that we often do is we isolate ourselves from bad people, or we think that we should not make friends with bad people. I think it should be the reverse. If people who are involved in grave things which are absolutely abhorring, we should not draw away from such people. In fact, this should make us even more concerned. We should be even more affectionate to these people because they need our love, they need our concern. And at times it is this love and it is this concern which accounts for that person changing his own world. So that is what the Prophet has wanted us to do. And then it says, وَلَا تَقَاطَعُوا, which means that do not break familial relations, do not break these blood ties. And this is something which has been mentioned in the Qur'an a number of times. In fact, the Qur'an has actually pointed out that the basic morals or the basic statutes of morality, while pointing them out, it has said that you have to fulfill the rights of your kindred. It is the top virtue. You must not in any way break your ties with them. So remember, this is something which is unbecoming. This is something which shows our own arrogance. This is something which tells us that, well, we find ourselves to be superior to other people, but it is not the right thing. This is not the right attitude. And as far as we are concerned, we have to realize that at times, yes, we do face oppression, we do face injustice, we do face this rivalry from our blood relations. But then, as the Quran has said at another instance, it says, idfa' billati hiya ahsan, that you drive away this evil that people are showing to you by doing good deeds to them. If they are bad to you, in return, you should be good to them. And the Quran says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. And if you do this, if you start coming closer to people, if you start loving people instead of hating them, in spite of their rivalry, in spite of their jealousy, in spite of all their evil habits that they have for us, and you reply every bad instance of happening or incident with a good one, with a smiling face, with perhaps encouraging their good deeds, pitching in with a word which they deserve if they have done good deeds. These are the things which are going to actually create that thing that we call moral victory. So if you are morally victorious, you are going to win over the heart of that person. And this is a objective that we all have, that we must try to win over the hearts of people. And finally, as it says, وَكُونُوا عِبَادُ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, that become servants of God and who are brothers to one another. This is something which we know clearly is not easy at all. When you find all people against you, or when you find the world turning against you, when you find that there are instances in which people are trying to lower your own morale, you do feel that in a very, very bad light. But the Quran says that you have to behave as one another's brothers. Kunu lillahi ikhwana, which means that just as a brother feels for another brother, you have to feel for your brother. You have to give that brother the opportunity to fall back on you, to encourage you. You are the one who's going to hide the faults of other people. You are going to highlight his good points. So all these things are commendable. They are things which we have to do as far as our own attitude towards other people are concerned. Now let us move on to the third section, which is the Bible verse of the day. And today we are going to study Psalms, or the 9th chapter and 9th verse of the book of Psalms. It says, the Lord will be a high tower for those who are crushed down, a high tower in times of trouble. So what is being expressed here is that our greatest shelter is God Himself. He is the one in which we have to seek refuge. God is our shelter. He is someone who is going to save us. He is our savior. He is our protector. He is our guardian. The Quran uses these words, wali, of course, signifying the fact that He is our friend as well. So, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu. This is what the Quran says, that God befriends those who are believers. So, God is the friend of believers. And it's such a beautiful expression. It gives us this feeling of elation that God is our friend. He is someone who's going to look after us. We can fall on Him. We can depend on Him. We know that He is not there to give us that hard time that we normally think. Yes, at times He makes us pass through various trials and tribulations, but then these trials and these tribulations are not meant to put us in bother per se, but the reason they come is they would like to make us stronger than before. So when we pass through a trial, we know that our latent abilities, they come to the surface. When we pass through our trials, we just draw on those extra reserves and we become stronger than before. So you see, these trials make you stronger than before. And then at times these trials bring us closer to God, because we tend to remember God more when we are passing through these difficult circumstances. And such is this huge impact that we have of that thing that we call loneliness, or the thing that we call the lack of dependability on other people, that when we feel that God is with us, we have that feeling that drenches us. It fulfills us. It makes us elated, and we feel the same way as a person who is under the sky. The sky is being rained down. There is a lot of raindrops falling on you, and just as those raindrops drench us, we feel that God's mercy also drenches us. It takes hold of us. It grips us, and we realize that we are experiencing God. We cannot see God. We cannot touch God. But yes, we can experience Him. And this experiential contact with God, of course, is something that all of us have. We know that many a time that when we pray to God, our prayers are fulfilled. And this gives us that feeling that someone has heard us. And then, of course, we also know that at times, if God has not heard us and things have not happened according to what we would have liked them to happen, in hindsight, we end up thinking that, well, it was better that things did not end up the way we wanted them to end up, because we would have been in a spot of bother, and we would have said that yes, this is something which is, had it happened to us, we would have been pushed to the wrong side. So when you look back in our hindsight, retrospectively, you always realize that things happen for the better. Things, in all instances, they push us, they urge us towards positivity. And this is precisely what Prophet David has said here, that the Lord will be a high tower for those who are crushed down, a high tower in times of trouble. So the concept of this tower, it's a huge structure. When you stand before it, you just simply have that awe-inspired feeling in your own self. You think that you are standing before a structure, a bulwark that is going to protect you, that is going to save you. And no different is the existence of God for all of us, the way this verse depicts. Now we come to the fourth segment, dear viewers. That is often a moderated section in which we have a topic which is floated, and you give your own points of views, and hopefully, inshallah, we should have a good discussion, because the topic is quite interesting. It says, what are the common complaints of children against their parents? So over to you, Mariam. You can now start off.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I'll start off the discussion. So I think there are times where parents, they're so focused on keeping their children safe to the point that they feel the need to act like, solid and strong rocks. And
Mm-hmm.
so they don't share a lot of the worries or other things that are going on in their lives. And I think, for younger children, that works. But for example, in my case, my brothers and I, we're all in our 20s. We're adults now. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my mom, she takes on a lot of social worries, that kind of stuff. She keeps it with herself. They might be
Mm-hmm.
discussing it amongst themselves, but they don't share as much with us. And my dad,
Mm-hmm.
he's even worse when it comes to communication. So he
Mm.
wouldn't tell us if there are any financial worries or anything of that sort, He's just like,
Right.
yeah, I'll deal with this. So, and I think it's important to share because that gives your children perspective, like what's going
Mm-hmm.
on around them in terms of say household politics or whatever,
Mm.
or work politics, but it also gives
Mm-hmm.
them perspective on how to deal with matters. So that's my complaint.
So this is a very positive complaint, I would say, that you'd like your parents to share their problems with you. And of course, this is something that that cannot be classified genuinely as a grievance that you might have against parents. But Yes, this is something which is, I mean, you see, parents, they tend to shield their children from bothers and these things. So they would not like to divulge the problems that they are going through. So typically, they would keep these problems to themselves. And I think that when you become a parent, you'll realize that how at times this is just like an inbuilt phenomena in every parent. A parent would like to keep those problems to himself or herself and give the best environment to the children. So I think this is in a way positive from them. But then I think what you can do is, as a child, as an adult grown-up child, you can talk to them and you can say that, well, I am grown up enough to understand the problems, and if you share your problems with me, they might be solved in a way that is congenial to all of us. You might have a helping hand, you might have something of an extended help. So I think in such cases, if you give that confidence to your parents, in which they are able to open up to you and they are able to confide in you, and this is an effort that adult children have to make. You see, you have to give them that trust that they can talk to you without being judged and without being in any way condemned. Because you see, when they talk about those complaints, at times those complaints, they could be, I mean, they could be unfounded and they could be well grounded. So you see, you need to have that magnanimity as well.
मेरा जो बच्चा है वो 13 साल का है, उसको जो ज़्यादा कंप्लेन होती है वो यही होती है कि आप लोग किसी हाल में खुश नहीं होते। कि अगर ये कहा जाए कि फर्स्ट 10 पोजीशंस में से लो, जब मैं वो ले लेता हूँ पहले 10 बच्चों में से क्लास में, तो आप कहते हैं कि पहले 3 की इम्पोर्टेंस है। तो आप लोग जो है वो खुश नहीं होते किसी हाल में। और दूसरे, ही इज सो मच इनटू क्रिकेट के उन्होंने खेल खेल के ऊपर का सारा पोर्शन, पंखे, लाइट, सब कुछ तोड़ दिया है। घर
सब
के अंदर
तोड़
भी
दिया।
खेलते हैं, बाहर भी खेलते हैं, छत पे भी खेलते हैं। तो वो चाहते हैं कि वो सिर्फ क्रिकेट खेलें, तो उनको थोड़ा सा समझाने में, और वो पढ़ाई की तरफ जरा बहुत मुश्किल से आते हैं, तो उनको काफी
राइट।
समझाना पड़ता है। तो वो एक दिन मेरे हस्बैंड ने कुछ इस तरह कह दिया कि हम जिंदा हैं अभी, अगर हमें कुछ हो जाए तो तुम अपने पैरों पे नहीं खड़े होगे। तो वो बहुत रोए, और मतलब रात 12 बजे तक वो रोते रहे इस बात पे। तो मेरी बेटी जो 16 साल की, वो कहने लगी कि आप लोग एक तो प्रेशर बहुत डालते हैं, और आप लोग जो है बहुत इमोशनल ब्लैकमेल बहुत करते हैं। ये कोई कहने की बात थी? वो तो इतना सा बच्चा है 13 साल का। तो लेकिन जाहिर है कि वो उसको हम लोग तो बिल्कुल डालते नहीं है इस तरह का प्रेशर, ना उनसे कहते हैं कि पोजीशन लो और ऐसी कोई बात, लेकिन वो बच्चे नाराज ही रहते हैं। मेरे बच्चों को तो
Yeah,
यही शिकायत है।
right. I mean, you see, we have to understand that children have their own emotions. They have a lot of pressures that we might not feel. You see, this peer pressure, the pressure of living in a society in which information sharing is so much that I mean, there's hardly any privacy left for people. So I think we need to understand that the age that we are passing through, the times that we are passing through, are very different from the times that existed when we were growing up. So therefore, in such circumstances, you have to encourage your children, you have to spend your quality time with them. You must make them realize that yes, there is a distance between the two of you, but at the same time, you are friends to one another. You look after one another. You can depend on one another. And this is a challenge that every parent does face. But I think that if this challenge is something which can be overcome in some way or the other, and if this challenge is something which a parent realizes that I'm not going to be a hindrance at all, so I think that this is something that can be overcome.
Thank you.
Laran Nashur, please go ahead.
Salam alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
So well, this is maybe like a more personal thing, but like my biggest problem with my parents, I'm 23 years old, and my parents are like consider themselves Shia, but I don't see myself as Shia. I see myself as a Sunni Muslim, and it creates a lot of friction between me and my parents, especially my father, as for some reason I try to avoid it constantly to discuss the religious topic with him, but somehow every single conversation somehow gets into religion, and it's very tiring. And also because I want to marry into a Sunni girl, a Sunni family, but my father or my parents are like opposed to that. They want like a Shiite family and girl, and they even like I don't want to say sabotaged me, but when I when
Hmm.
I was with like a Sunni girl. I was engaged to
Mm-hmm.
her, but in the end, it did not work out because of the friction between our two families. So I am
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know what to do at this point.
I understand. So you see, this is a classical and a typical instance of in which the parents don't realize that their child is now a grown-up human being, and he or she should have the complete freedom of choice in selecting a spouse, in selecting a career, in taking any major decision of life. You see, they need to understand that once a child has as he's entered into a grown-up age, now he is an individual in himself. And yes, parents can suggest, they can give their own opinion, they can share their experience, but they in no way should make a face or, complain or brood or, as we can see that they also emotionally blackmail their children by saying that, well, if you're not going to listen to me, that I'm not going to attend your wedding, or I'm not going to bless you, or this and that, which is not the right thing. So remember, this has arisen because we think, in fact, the parents think that they have this hold on their children as long as they are living. They might be 60 or 80 years old, but if the parent is alive, he or she still thinks that, well, that my child should listen to me. And I think this is a paradigm which is which is part of many patriarchal societies. So patriarchy is something which demands obedience. Patriarchy is something which likes you to submit. And yes, surely we are trying to move away from that patriarchal emotion, I would say, but still there are, so many families all over the world who don't realize this. And I have my sympathies with you, Baran, and I do think that this is one area in which the complaint of an adult child is absolutely genuine. It's absolutely something which is warranted. And I wish something could be done to make the parents understand that they have adopted a wrong stance.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you have any advice on my situation, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, I think, in all circumstances, be polite. Don't express your frustration or anger. Do what you would like to do. But I think you can be firm without being harsh. So, my advice would be to be firm without being harsh.
Okay, thank you very much. Jazakallah khair.
Nashad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. And first of all, a thumbs up for Mariam, her viewpoint. Dr. Saab, the complaint that I think my children have against me is, like, the youngest is not yet an adult, but he thinks that I am over dominant, advising him to do this and don't do that, and do this and don't do that. While I know that he is still a little immature in the sense that he's not an adult, and after all, I have my experience behind me. So whenever I try and engage with him in conversation, of course, I have a lot of talk with my children. We exchange views on many things. But when it comes to something like telling him about studies or something, there is a reaction that I find in him, which is like he will avoid eye contact. And if I'm talking to him while I'm sitting and he's passing by and I've called him, he'll just give me a short answer and try and go into the other room. So these are problems that parents sometimes face. And this is a sort of complaint that children have, that our parent is too dominating. While we on our part don't think we are dominating, we are just giving him the benefit of our experience.
Right. I think one of the things that might benefit you is to adopt a style in which your child thinks that you are not, in any way critical of his approach into life or whatever he does, but you are trying to facilitate him. So you see, what I try to do and what I try to advise is that you can share your experience, you can share your view, but once you have done that, you give this disclaimer to your child that, well, this is my view, but whatever you say and whatever you do is something that as an adult you know would have consequences, and you're free to choose, but I'll always be behind you. Whatever decision you take, I'll support you. I may not agree with the decision. I might share a different experience. I might tell you that this is something that is going to be lethal. But if you still think so, then I will still support you. I'll still stand behind you as a father or as a mother. So I think this is something which instills that trust and confidence in the child. And at times, this confidence makes him or her realize that, well, I maybe need to trust my father much more. So I think this is this phrase that we often use as to learn to let go of your children. So you see, you need to let them make mistakes, because unless they'll make mistakes, and I think if you retrospectively think on our own lives, we have made plenty of mistakes and learned through those mistakes. So you see, it's not the way of God that you learn always through others' mistakes. Many people have to do mistakes to learn from those mistakes, and I think we need to realize the course which God has given us. So accepting that your child can make a mistake, and when he does so, you'll not be there to scold him, but you'll be there to still embrace him and tell him that, well, I'm still there for you. So I think this is that trust and confidence which you can inspire in your child, if you are able to do so. That is not going to take him away in any way. Even I've seen this attitude win children in a way that at times they would do something purely for the wish of their father or mother, even if they have a different view. I mean, I'm not saying this is correct. What I'm saying is that they go to lengths and they take pains in pleasing their father and mother, because they know that my father and mother, even if they are differing with me, they are still standing by me. And this is one thing which is difficult also, because it needs a lot of patience. You know that there is an abyss right down the road. You know that he's going to fall in that, but you still stop short and say, well, I am with you, but remember, this is something that's going to happen. So you see, as parents, our tendency is that we try to grab our child and not let him fall. But I think that this is one area that is fine if the child is growing up. But once he's grown up, you need to let that child fall in that pit at times, because that's the only way he's going to learn.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We'll
Thank
take
you,
two
Doctor.
more
Thank you.
discussion. We'll take two more discussion points, and then we'll move on to Q&A because we're running short on time. Bismillah, Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. So, my 15-year-old, he broke his phone. So I obviously told him, I gave him a little bit of peace of my mind, and then I told him I'm not going to get him a new phone because it's very expensive. And I also told him that he has to earn it back. However, what I've noticed is the past 10 days since the phone's been taken away, he's a different child. He's a sweet, wonderful, communicative child. He's focused on the things that I always wanted him to be focused on. And because he's been born into the age of technology, I never realized how much the gadgets impact these children. You never see their complete personality. However,
Right.
he does have access to a computer because that's a requirement of the school. So he's able to access the social media, blah, blah, blah. Now, my question to you is, what is the right? I don't want to buy him a new iPhone because it's expensive. And I want him to realize that his dad works very hard to earn this money, and I just can't buy him a new phone. But he seems to be very dejected because he can't communicate with his friends, blah, blah, blah. What is the right time where you put your, you realize that, okay, it's time to kind of give in, the lessons been learned. What am I supposed to do? He's acting wonderfully. I don't.
Well, you see, the wonderful aspect that you are experiencing could have a different actually background. But I think that what we have to understand is that phones are now an essential part of every grown-up or semi-grown-up child. It's like, it's like something which cannot be parted with. It's like oxygen, as good as oxygen. And if you deprive someone of oxygen, he'll suffocate. It's like water for the fish. If you take out fish from water, they'll be, just going to, you know what's going to happen. So I think that if the accident has happened that he's lost his phone, it could be advertent, it could be inadvertent, but I think that the right attitude would be to have it replaced, I would say, as soon as possible. And I think this is something which will build that trust and friendship as well, because you have replenished something which is not, as you said, it's not at all, it's expensive. You know that is something that you have to do. But I think that I mean there are packages in which you can buy a phone on lease, you can do it on installments. And there are so many things available. So my thing is that because of the fact that phones have come to occupy such a cardinal position in the life of every person, that to exist without a phone is I mean not just children. Look at us. For us as well, it has become an indispensable friend or a foe, whatever you may call it. So I think that maybe what you can do is that you have, buy that phone for him, and as a result, maybe you can negotiate something with him that, well, your phone is coming back to you, but you have to concentrate more on your studies, and you have to have a balance. So I think what you can do is that enter into a negotiation settlement, have the upper hand because you're providing that phone, and and do what every parent would do is, and that is that you would like to at the same time warn your child what the pitfalls are, and at the same time encourage him. And as I just said to a previous answer, that you see at times this extremity has to be, you have to encounter it to understand what the mean is. So George Bernard Shaw, if I remember correctly, has said this, that it's a very famous quote. He said that the road to wisdom leads to the palace of excess, because unless you know what is more than enough, you cannot know what is enough. The road to excess leads to the palace of wisdom, because unless you know what is more than enough, you can. So you see, there are things that you have to experience. This is something that we all go through, and that experience teaches, and at times that experience does not even teach. And this is how people are. Sometimes they learn from experience, sometimes they have to do that experience repeatedly and they still don't learn. But you see, these are personality types. God has not created everyone in the same fashion. There are some people who learn, there are some people who will never learn. So you see, you cannot marshal around people. You cannot always regiment them. You have to be a parent who is loving, caring, sharing experience, and at the same time supporting your child, even if your child takes a bad decision.
So he broke his phone out of carelessness and because he was upset about something. It fell and it broke. I did get him a phone, but I got him a cheaper phone. Now, obviously, he goes to a school where, he feels that he needs to have an iPhone because,
Right.
the school is a little affluent and he doesn't want to.
Right.
So,
I think that you should buy him a phone, because you see the peer pressure that he might be experiencing, it tells on your nerves. It has that pressure on a child's nerves, and you as parents at times we don't realize, but because I do have contact with the younger generation a lot, I have a lot of idea, I would say, that the extreme the extreme pain, I would say, or discomfort they would suffer if they have a less than average phone and they interact with their children. So I think it has a very bad effect on their psyche, and this should not happen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Appreciate it.
Akram Bhatti, please go ahead, and then we'll move on to Q&A.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, as an older parent, I don't find myself agreeing with your suggestion that we should always stay behind our children and tell them, I'm behind you no matter what you do. What if they start doing haram things? I cannot be, and they are in their 40s, okay? And then if they start doing haram things, I cannot tell them, I'll stay behind you no matter what. I can tell them what's right, what's wrong. I can, without slapping them or because they're grown up kids, I can show my anger in different ways, not talking to them or not staying away from them or trying to improve you. But so that's one thing. A second thing I realized that there's a big cultural difference between our culture that we grew up and the children they grew up, and not education, but tarbiyat was, we were told that you respect your parents, respect your elders, this and that. Over here, what I realized that my kids have gone to best universities like Yale and stuff, and they both done masters, but they do not respect the parents or be quiet even against parents. They don't like the parents' opinion. They should be. I think they should be at least quiet. talk back to you. So that's where I cannot find myself
Right.
compromising. Okay.
I think this is a very tough situation. I understand, but you see, if you just have a view of what happens when you let go of your children, and if you stay annoyed with your children, and you always give them the look that, well, I'm not in favor of you doing these things. So you see, it's not going to turn them away from those things. It might make them even more adamant on adopting those things and drawing themselves away from your own company. You see, you need to understand that there is a loss that has to be understood here. The loss is you have to take the lesser loss. So a greater loss is that the child might go away from you. Even a greater loss would be that he, out of his outward appearance or outward mannerism, might like you, but inwardly he would start hating you. And your own ego would be satisfied because you know that your child is listening to you. So this is a bigger loss, I would say. And a smaller loss is that if you tell them that, well, your life is your life. I mean, every person, you see, this is the charter of God. God has given every person the right to live the way he would like to. And you have a right to disagree. And I'm not saying that you don't disagree. You can clearly present your disagreement. But you see, what is going to happen is that if you're going to present your disagreement and also remain annoyed or angry or start meeting them less, what is the end going to be? The end is going to be that he or she is going to become stronger in that negative commitment, and ultimately the respect between the two of you might be compromised. And also the fact is that any chance of reconciliation which could have been there had you been closer to them, that would have been lost. So you see, you have to weigh that there are two types of losses. Which is the lesser loss? So that is how I think, that is why I suggest to parents that you have to be practical in this regard and look at the scheme of life. God has given every person the opportunity and the free will to do what he or she thinks to be the case. He's going to call them to account himself, and the parents are not going to be responsible for the deeds of their adult children. So, I mean, when you are in touch with your adult children, in spite of the wrongdoings, you still have a chance of winning them back. You still have a chance to maybe impacting them and making them understand that they have taken a wrong decision. But if you are always, annoyed at your children, and the children think that my father or my mother is never going to meet me, or maybe they are very angry with me, that's not the solution, I would say. Yes, at a younger stage, when you're angry at your younger children, the way you groom younger children is entirely different. That could work. But at an adult age, this anger is more often than not going to, draw them away from you. That's what I fear.
So it's more hurt than anger. It's more hurt.
Yes, I know. You see, that hurt actually translates into anger at times. So you see, that hurt, you should not be hurt. That's what I'm saying. Because you see, you have done your job. Your job was to groom them when they were growing up. Now, if they have turned out to be a different person, you look at what Prophet Noah did. He lost his child to the waves of the storm. He tried to make him realize that he's rebelling against God. He did not leave his child. He did not show anger to his child. He was more emotionally attached to his child. And he said that, well, you are not going to be saved from the wrath of God. So you see, prophets of God, when they see that their children or their family, they are drawing away from God, or they have something which they don't, in any case, condone, they become even more concerned. They become even more affectionate. This is what I have seen from the Qur'an. So I think that this is one area that we need to maybe reevaluate and revisit.
Yes, sir. Thank you much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We'll take some chat questions first, and if we have any time remaining, we may take questions from participants, but we're very short on time, just to warn the participants. So the first one asks, this person was looking after his father, and his father was suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. And during the many years that he was looking after him, he had to scold him because sometimes he would act against his best interest, and then the participant would feel guilty and seek Allah's forgiveness for scolding him. Is it okay, and will Allah forgive him for speaking harshly with his parents, especially if it never involved any personal selfish reasons?
Well, it all depends on the situation. I mean, there could be situations in which if you are slightly, if you're slightly tough on your parent who is not a normal parent. I mean, as you said, suffering from dementia or Alzheimer is something which strips off a person of his normal emotions. So if you are slightly, I would say, harsh, not harsh, but you're slightly more vindictive or more dominant, that elderly person is more like a child now. So he would listen to you without getting emotionally depressed. So if the emotions in any way, if the person is emotionally still in a situation that your bad or your harsh behavior is going to affect the emotions, and he or she would become, as you can see, that no parent would like to be scolded, then yes, this is something which should not be done. I mean, you should adopt many other ways. There are communities of people who live, who are given this advice by those who are passing through these circumstances, that how should we deal with parents who have these diseases, and they offer very good tips. So that is what we should do. But then, as I said, there could be exceptional cases in which an elderly person becomes like a child, and if you are strict on that elderly person, he does not realize that you are being strict. He actually listens to you. So in that case, I would say that perhaps being strict could be something which is allowed. But once that person realizes that my child is talking back to me or using harsh words or saying something which I should do and I'm not going to accept it, that is an area in which, as I said, there are communities who advise you how you can deal with your parents who are passing through these diseases without being impudent to them. You have to be respectful to them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, and unfortunately, this participant's father passed away a week ago, and they're dealing with a sudden, shock of death, and the father was supposed to marry them off, and then the sudden death happened, and they were very close to them. So they're asking, what can they do? And it's hard. It feels hard for them to resume their life without their parents.
I think it's a question of accepting the decision of God and also realizing that this life is a place in which this is just a temporary parting of ways. And the biggest reconciliation that any Muslim has is that, he or she is going to meet the parents once again in paradise if they do good deeds. If the parents do good deeds and the children follow them in these good deeds, they'll be united eternally in paradise. So this is like a huge assurance that they can think of. And other than that, obviously, time is the best healer, as we all know. It does take time to enter into a new routine. Of course, the father or the mother is the most integral part of a family, and if any one of them goes away, your life takes a very new turn. But then this is how life is. This is how God has made us. So I think it's just a question of time, realizing that this is God's scheme, and also realizing that this is not the end of the world. You still have the chance to meet your parents in the next world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, what is an advisable age to let go of a child and give them more independence? Is that about 12 or 13 years old?
There is no such age that can be prescribed in numbers. As soon as your child is mentally mature and he or she has the ability to judge between right and wrong, that is the age. It could be 10, it could be 14, it could vary from person to person. You don't fix these ages. It's like having that mental maturity in which a person knows what right and wrong are.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Baran Nashir, please go ahead, and that'll be our last question of the day.
It's kind of related to the previous point I made, because I was wondering if I decide to marry a girl who my parents do not approve of because of these religious reasons they have, and they sort of emotionally blackmail me, like, we will not bless your marriage, or we will remove you from our life, this and that. What is the right thing to do? Do I then choose for my parents and accept this is the life for me, or do I disobey my parents and accept?
So, Baran, you have to understand that if you exercise your own choice, you're not disobeying your parents. This is not, obeying your parents this is not the ambit in which you need to obey parents. Obeying parents relates to their own rights. This is your right. This is your life. So basically, I mean, a choice that you can make here is the one that is entirely your own prerogative. What you need to know is that if you take this step, you would be absolutely correct as far as religion is concerned. But maybe if you think that it will cause a lot of problems and this and that, maybe you can settle for a compromise. So that's a choice that you have to make. But what has to be, I mean, absolutely clear before you is that if you take a decision, then religiously this would not be wrong. This would not be like disobeying them, because this is not an area in which disobedience has been, in which God has said that you cannot be disobedient to your parents. Disobedience is regarding their own rights, and this is your own right.
Okay, but it's like they are like, I don't know, emotionally blackmailing me with.
Yes, that is what parents do. This is what parents do. That they'll say that they'll not bless you, they'll not attend your wedding, etc., etc. Well, it's their own right, and this is a wrong attitude that parents generally adopt. So if you, put up with this wrong attitude, as I said, without being harsh, you can still be firm and polite, and you can go along the way that you like to do. And if you do so, religion is not going to say that you are disobeying your parents. I mean, this is your right.
Okay, so I don't have to be afraid that God
No,
will
not at all. Not
bless
at all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another great session and for all these wonderful advices. And thank you all to the participants for a really fun discussion segment. It was nice to get a lot of perspective.